أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We have been studying Surah Al-Ikhlas, and inshallah today we will conclude it. This is in Revelation order, 22nd Surah, and the third from last Surah of Quran. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say He is Allah, the Ahad, one and only. Allahu Samad, Allah the Samad, the eternally besought of all. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He begets not, nor is he begotten. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. And there is none comparable unto him, the Ahad. So we talked about Qul huwa Allahu Ahad. We talked about Allahu Samad. You remember everything about that. Last week was Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad. We talked about what that means. This is not simply negating the obvious, meaning the known understanding of biologically being given birth to or giving birth to someone, but it was more so about me giving godlike properties or divinity to things which came into being, which are being given birth to, or which give birth to or lead to something else, cannot be the creator themselves. This was the idea in a nutshell. And now let's conclude, inshallah, this week with وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and there is none comparable unto him. So this question, as I'm asking in here, does anyone imagine God to be comparable to anyone or anything? When Quran mentions something, we should ask questions like, why is Quran talking like that? Like, for example, if it is talking about something very clear, like denying the obvious, let's say, then there needs to be a secondary meaning. It cannot be like the literal meaning cannot be the first thing. Or maybe, as it had been the case with Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad, he begets not, nor is he begotten, we should ask ourselves, well, especially if you are coming from a religious background, probably you are not attributing anybody to Allah, as it is the like even in, let's say, religious circles, the word create, we pay extra attention not to use it for, oh, a creative approach, or what did you create today, sort of a thing. We never say that because we say, no, it's only God that creates. But saving the word for God doesn't mean that we solve the problem, really, because by using different words, we mean the same thing. So in here, we can question it as such. When the verse says, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا, so there's none comparable unto him, such is Ahad, such a Ahad we are talking about. What does that mean? Do I imagine God to be comparable to anyone or anything in any shape or form? Because it shouldn't be that Quran is speaking just an unnecessary statement, because not even an extra letter, unnecessary emphasis, no such thing is happening in the speech of the Creator. Do I make such a comparison? Or what comes to your mind when this is mentioned? What do you think? Why does my Creator attract my attention towards here? There is none comparable unto him. Nothing?
Because like, so that you don't compare the things that you see in this world and then attribute or try to define who the creator is by those things. Maybe you see something extraordinary, and maybe you can say like, maybe this is comparable to him.
Example, like in your life, do you have such a thing, for instance? Let's go with something that's more identifiable in our lives, let's say.
I think It was a question you said like you'll start from this, but you can maybe say mercy.
Mercy, okay,
Of your mother.
mercy of your mother.
You can say that as comparable as if mercy is the quality of the creator.
Okay, mercy is the quality of the creator, and my mom is also merciful.
Yeah.
So, but then I say he is not comparable to anything, anybody. So what does that mean then? Okay, we are starting to get into an interesting territory then, right? Yes.
So when we give such examples, like the question comes to my mind is, like, are we really concerned about such questions? Like, I'm trying to imagine Qadir walking on the street and saying that, wait a second, my mom is merciful, the God is, I mean, it doesn't work, but how it works, and
Yeah.
so on. So
How is this becoming a relevant question?
exactly,
Okay.
right? So I think one way to take it relevant, when we try to make sense of things in our life, like we say this happened because God is punishing us, for instance.
Mhm.
Or that happened and God is loving us.
Mhm.
Or, you know, when we think about things like the story of Adam, for instance. But Quran says, you know, the Adam was the first creator, God created him this way and that way. In all these instances, we always imagining God as someone, like doing something.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we usually have these problems not making sense of anything happening in our lives.
Mhm.
So the same thing, like the merciful, it becomes relevant when we think it in the context of, let's say, something bad happens, as we discussed on Saturday. Children are dying, and then we try to imagine a God merciful, and what we mean is like a God clothed in white with a long beard,
White beard.
white and long beard. I don't know, maybe caressing some animal, like a merciful figure. Of course, we know that there's a ceiling, we don't put it that way, but this is what we do in our minds, like imagining a guy or a lady, doesn't matter, doing something. And we always have the problem to making sense of this.
Mhm. Which I think then I'm going to also put the second question so that it's related. Like, how do I know or interact with God if he is unlike anything? Because imagination is an important part of human faculties, right? So I am giving some sort of a shape to something when I entertain a thought in by myself, let's say, like without identifying that, how am I going to even like produce further thought or even emotionally engaged with such a thing? But since the beginning of the surah, we have been talking about he is Ahad, and when we were talking about Ahad, we one way we described Ahad was he is absolute, he is unlike anything. This was also the part of the description of Ahad in the first place. And now we are saying he is unlike anything, putting another emphasis on there. So how would you, like, as if it makes the creator unreachable, inaccessible, and whatnot, but this is the exact opposite of what I was looking for. Because I am in need of, like, all I have, as we have been discussing so far, all I have are needs. I have so many needs. And I was looking for someone who can take care of those needs and whatnot. And then now you're saying that that one is unlike anything. Then how am I going to like interact with him? How am I going to get to know him? Or how shall I position myself towards him, before him? So these all becomes very mixed feelings, because if you get to know a human person, like you define that person saying that, oh, that person is merciful, a little angry when things get serious, but also otherwise jokes. These are all starting to make descriptions of that person. And as I start putting those descriptions, you are saying each one of them is a boundary. You're saying, oh, he's not like this, but like that. I mean, physical explanation is a cartoon-like explanation, but it's a good explanation, like beards and whatnot. But even if it's not a physical description you're putting, still you're putting a description by saying that he is merciful, he is this, that. But if he is unlike anything, he is becoming beyond my reach, sort of. How do I make sense of that information then, if it's an information? Or is it an information? We can also ask that. Is this surah giving me information about God? Yes, Dora.
I think in there, like, it's important to understand, like, who you're talking about, and as long as you're talking about your creator who is purposefully, like, bringing existence about, then you need to understand that he will have made accessible whatever is necessary for you to interact with.
Made accessible, that's good.
Like, it's like,
Okay, go ahead.
it's like if there's a blind person,
Okay.
right? Like, it's not that they stop interacting with things around them. They just use whatever is accessible to them, for example, hearing or touching or, whatever, in order to interact with their environment. They don't even think that they are lacking something because they don't know that aspect of existence. So,
I mean, that's good. That's good, but I'm trying to understand a little more. So let's say I think about someone that you work with or that you share time with. It could be a friend, it could be your mom and whatnot, or some person, a boss or whatever. And let's say you're going to buy a gift to that person. It's hard to buy gifts to wives, by the way, if you are an engineer. I don't know art. Anyways, let's not get into the specifics, family specifics. So let's say if you are an engineer and let's say your wife is totally unlike you, okay, an artist. And I say, let's say I see some piece of I don't have to give okay real examples. Now that you're here.
Let's talk about it.
So just imagine that, well, you say, oh, this is a good thing. And she would like this, I say. But then Birkan comes and says that she is unlike anything, meaning don't buy this gift. I say, okay, but still I would like to buy something to her. And they say, well, let me buy this small mirror to her. And then this is very bulky, engineer-like. She wouldn't like it. Like, what would I do? Then you say, she is unlike anything, is not helping me because I would like to, like, getting to know her is something, if at the end of the day, this is what I'm looking for to satisfy my needs. Let's get to the real example. I'm getting to know my creator because of my needs. Like I am a needy creature in this existence and my needs to be fulfilled. And it looks like the provider is him. And of course, him seems to be the only person with whom I will interact with and get my problem solved. Yet, as I attempt doing anything, Quran comes and says, he is unlike that too, then where am I missing something? Maybe my attitude is wrong from the beginning, but let's try to understand, yes.
I think about like a relationship with the creator. I think maybe my first kind of tendency might be, oh, I need to do something for this creator. Like, for example, if we go back to the mother example, I might feel like, oh, my mother has done so much for me throughout my whole life. Now that I'm grown up, I have to do something to kind of like make up for everything she's done for me, or like treating it as sort of like a transaction. Like my mom did something for me, so now I have to like do something for her. So maybe it's like this having this like transactionary like attitude towards like worship is like maybe something that is not like right, and maybe this ayat is trying to like address that, like you're the one whose needs are being fulfilled, like you trying to do an act of worship for your creator is not like the purpose of this like existence. It's about you seeking the source of your needs and like supplicating to have your needs be fulfilled.
Yeah. So actually that verse then is really defining the type of relationship that I can have, and that that would also mean that in certain wrong types of relationship that I try to establish with my creator, I am actually imagining a creator. We'll detail this a little more, but I think in a nutshell, this is what's going on. I might be imagining a creator and trying to establish a relationship as if I am establishing a relationship of a same kin, like a human. And I'm trying to find, oh, this is how I would please my wife, and I would like to please my creator, him. And then I am imagining a creator, and how would he be pleased? Well, I should buy a necklace to creator. I'm joking. But this is being the issue. Like that sort of a relationship is the issue. No more? Okay. There was another hand. Yes, Luan.
I was also gonna say, like, we could also read this as, you know, like my interaction with him is also unlike my interaction with anything. You know?
Yeah.
So like when you look at the creation and feelings are created within you, that's God speaking to you. So, you know, like in that sense, like it's unlike any other relationship that you have.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And also we can, add more questions, just to add more question. What would happen if I imagine him, meaning, the reason I put imagine is since he's unlike anything, it's saying that don't imagine him pretty much, right? Don't put any shape to him. That's why I use the word imagine. So what would happen if I imagine creator with my relationship with him? And what would happen if I change the nature of that relationship? Because this is saying that don't go that route. You cannot go that route, but also don't go that route. Then how else am I going to interact with my creator? Yes.
I guess what you just said. Now, last week we sort of discussed like how do I know if I even have a relationship with him in the first place? So I think that's like one thing to ask as well. But as regards to like how do I know my God? I think I come back to this example of mercy, right? My mother is merciful, but I also know that Allah has the most mercy out there, right? So if I sort of know the mercy from my mother, then I also know my God through mercy, because mercy is one of the qualities that the God has. So that's how I think about it.
So since I found a mathematician, I'll first go with the technicalities, then I will switch back to the relationship part. But let's,
Maybe we should.
yeah, you guys. So let's then get done with this technical, a little logical, seemingly part of the thing to clear it up. And then let's try to convert it to practically or relevantly, how do I make use of that? So let's say we talked about this example last week too, right? And even there's Prophet's narration saying that if all the mercies of the mothers were to be collected, it's going to make just one drop of the ocean of God's mercy, right? So there seems to be some sort of a comparison being made in here, like God's mercy is so large, but all the mother's mercy makes a single drop, but still quantifiably, maybe as a mathematician, you would say 2 to the x to the x to the x to the x, but like,
Big O.
yeah, some number, right? Some number, but still quantifiably large. Is this the case? If this would have been the case, this verse would be a little like, he says he's unlike anything, not only in terms of quantity, but also quality. like mother's mercy, God's mercy, and whatnot. So then what do we mean when we say God is merciful? Because if mom's mercy is totally unlike God's mercy, then but we use the same word to express both. Like we are not saying that, well, when it comes to mothers, I mean mercy, but God's mercy means funny, or I don't know, some other mercy, like some different thing. Doesn't make sense. When I say God's mercy and mom's mercy, you know that I'm talking about the same thing, right? You don't imagine God's mercy to be anger-like. It's not a different category. It's still mercy. But the verse is saying that he's unlike anything. So then what is going on? What are we talking about then when we say God is merciful, or names of God? Yes.
I mean, I guess that's actually my question. So I still don't think I fully understand what the examples that were given. With this idea, like how do I interact with God? Because now I am having the same issue of like, you canceled out the fact that like you don't have imagination, which is actually like the easiest it seems like whether you like to or not, there's some sort of image, but if you tell me to draw, I don't have like clear image. But this idea of like something near you, like this like comfort, right? Like you're like, okay, nobody's judging this idea, but like it's an idea that I have, let's say, and that's what. So if we say, okay, it's unlike that, so you can imagine that. Now you're kind of like, what am I doing? So because I feel like unexplored territory and how to interact with God. So even with the example, I'm still stuck at the physicality aspect of it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very good point, and we need to make this distinction also to clarify our understanding about La ilaha. Like we have been talking about La ilaha, the negation part, and then we said illallah. So that part is clear in our previous discussions, right? I am looking for a door of mercy. Let's talk about mercy, since we start with the example of mercy. So, and our example would be in this case, La Rahmana illa Allah. Like we are looking for a mercy because we observe, let's say, cat-kitten relationship. Let's make it out there. And I said that, well, there is this, well, because it's something new, it's happening. I do that now, it's being put in there. Where is this coming from? Is it coming from the cat? Well, cat is not a single entity. It is made up of those particles and whatnot. Is it the particles? Is it the milk? Is it the fur? Is it the wind? Is it the air? Like, go and question all the entities that is at play in this cat-kitten relationship. I say, no, food that the cat ate cannot be the source of this mercy. I do observe a mercy, like what I call as mercy. Not the air, not the DNA, not the evolution, not this, not that, whatever, right? Whatever name you put, I say, la, this cannot be the Rahman. But then what do I mean when I say, but there has to be a source of mercy? Because mercy is being there, yeah.
And also not just that, and that it's unlike anything. So like, because I'm still asking, even though like I was just told it's unlike anything. I'm like, okay, then what is it like? Like that's my actual question. It's not like, oh, it's unlike anything, and I'm like resting. I'm still asking, like, okay, if it's not like that, then what is it like?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one asking that, and everybody just was okay with that. But I think that's a question that comes up even after you tell me something.
Yeah. So this is what la means, right? It's not like this, it's not like that. Like meaning anything identifiable, anything I can put my finger on, or even I can put my imagination on. I am trying to see, can you be maker of this cat-kitten relationship, right? Anything that I call as a thing says, no, I can't. In the absence of anything, what is being my conclusion? Like this is, I'm going a few steps back to all the way to the beginning of our discussion about La ilaha. It cannot be this, it cannot be that. And by this and that, I mean anything within existence. None of them says I can do that, right? What is left? Anything that could be considered as a thing is not the source of existence, yet there has to be a source of existence. What does that mean? Such a thing must exist, But I cannot define him in terms of size, because size was some of the things that I pointed in this existence, right? I cannot quantify him in terms of smell either, in terms of color either. Because these were all the things that I considered down the road. And they said that, no, I can't be, I can't be, I can't be. This is why absolute means unquantifiable, undefinable. Because if I was able to, I would have found it in the first place, but I couldn't. So this is why it is unlike anything. This is what absolute means. This is what ahad means. And this verse is again emphasizing this once more. If we apply to the case of cat-kitten relationship, I do observe a mercy being there, and I say there must exist someone or some source of this mercy, because mercy is something that I sense, that I know it's created, yet its source is not here. What do I say with that? He is unlike anything, but when referring to this absolute pertaining to that cat-kitten relationship, I am going to use the word Rahman, not to define him, but to define this experience. Does this make sense? Like when I talk about him as Rahman versus him as Alim, the knowledgeable, I am not talking about, oh, his head is like black hair, his eyes are blue. This is how we would describe things, right? But when we say God is merciful and God is all-knowing, what I mean is not about their describing him. What I'm describing is, source, I do observe mercy, and the source of mercy is him, and I put a name to that relationship as Ar-Rahman, and I observe knowledge here, again within the creation, and to refer to him as the source of this knowledge, I call him Al-Alim. I'm not defining him per se. I am defining him through my experience. I am always staying here. Does this make sense? I am always talking about the him based on his actions, based on his creation, his manifestation. Yes, go ahead, Khalid.
I'm sorry if I don't understand this, but from what I understand is like you can only experience what is being created, but like you cannot know the creator and you cannot interact with him in any way, shape, or form, the way you describe it. That is what I understood.
Is this what you guys understood? Okay. So for the interaction part, we didn't get to the interaction yet. But getting to know part, with my mind, this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about my heart, especially when it comes to interaction too. But as I was trying to split, let's first clean up the part with our potentially wrong understanding of giving a shape to the creator. Let's clean up that part. If this happens, probably you're going to be left with the feeling of, then what am I going to do with that knowledge? But let's first clean up the part with what we do not mean when we say God is merciful. When we say God is merciful, I do not imagine, you were in the military school, right? They have those, what is it? Ranks. So it's not like, oh, God is merciful. It's one badge in God's shoulder. Or he is also all knowledgeable, another badge in God's shoulder. This is not what we are talking about. I am talking about, I do observe mercy, and the source of this mercy is not from here. And to name this, again, I'm not talking about the logical conclusion part of it. I say he is Ar-Rahman. There must, by Ar-Rahman, I mean there must exist an absolute source of this mercy that I observe here. But again, this is a very dry description. I know that this is a very dry description. We will then eventually ask the question, what is the benefit of me knowing that God is merciful? What's the outcome of that? Because if this stays as an information or a knowledge, it's pretty much useless. I agree with that. We will then ask the question, What am I going to do with this conclusion? But even before coming to there, though, the reason I'm making this distinction is, what's the alternative? I say, my mom is merciful. God is a billion, trillion, zillion times more merciful than my mom. The nature of mercy becomes the same. This is the problem. By this description that I'm making at the beginning, I'm trying to avoid that. Because if I say so, then God becomes something from within existence in my perception, which simply becomes a useless conclusion because creation itself becomes the creator, then everything collapses anyways. I mean, that sort of an understanding eventually will fall apart. Then somebody would say, an atheist friend of mine would come and say, well, could God create a stone greater than whatever, that stupid thing? This is where that understanding can lead me to, practically speaking. But he is unlike anything. Your comment.
Okay, maybe one thing we should be careful is that, so when we, like I'm listening to you, you are explaining something, and sometimes my attitude is that I'm trying to memorize what you say. I say, okay, Yusuf said, we cannot imagine God this way and that way, that is what we know. And then we can also we can do this, but cannot do that.
Okay.
And I'm not
Yeah.
making fun of anyone taking notes. No. Taking notes is great. Yeah, taking notes is great. Not taking notes is not great. It's laziness. I'm talking about an attitude, right? So, okay, then you got it. But I think instead, so what I should be doing when I listen to you, I should take it as an invitation to, because this is what you are saying, that I mean, look at your experiences in life, right? So instead of trying to, let's say, have an equation in our minds or a formulation which will resolve the issue. If my mother has mercy and then God has mercy, what am I going to do? Rather than that, let's just look at a moment in our life where we experience mercy. Okay? And when we do that, as we studied all these years, and you nicely summarized, when I ask this question, and I do ask this question, it's not something only philosophers do. Oh, who is the source of this mercy I see there? So this is not the thing. Like we do ask, who is the merciful one there? I mean, maybe not clearly articulating it, but when we have this fear that my mom will die and no one will remain to give me mercy, it's an implicit form of the question, right? Who has this mercy? Who is the source of this mercy? So we all have this question. So don't take it as a cold external question. We do have this question. And when we ask this question, who is the source of this mercy? And our immediate answer is my mom. But then when we see our moms in a situation where not that much merciful, then we say, oh, maybe, maybe she sometimes has mercy, sometimes doesn't have mercy, and so on and so forth. Anyway, when we start questioning all this, right? And this is very human thing. Even small kids do that. And even Kadir does, right? So, with his muscles and so on, talking about the mercy. So what happens when we start questioning this, we realize that it cannot be our mom. It's just meat and bone, nothing more. Just like ourselves. It's not even much different than a plastic bottle in terms of the constitution and so on. We know that. So we eliminate all these, and as you said, like necessarily we end up with the conclusion that nothing can be source of this mercy. But I still experience it, and so we are in the that end. So that's the human, let's say, the condition. That there is something there that I experience, but I don't even know where it comes from. Like my ideas, for instance. Firsthand, I know that it's not me. If it was me that generating, creating these ideas, every time my wife asked for an excuse, I would generate one more and then serve her. It doesn't. I mean, she knows if I sometimes forget that the ideas are not mine. So, but they are still there, and I say maybe my brain is creating, and my brain is like anyway, it's just a piece of me, but it's still there. So this tension that we have, right? That tension. So first we have to realize that there's a tension. Most of the time we don't realize it because we take things as granted. We act like a drunken or drunk people. Like this is us. We act as drunk because we forget about things, we don't care about them and so on. But in reality, when we face ourselves, we are in a constant tension. We need something, it is there, we don't know where it came from, and this tension, right? This is the human condition. Then we cannot find the answer. So we have to first face this. Then revelation comes and tells us, Khalid, you cannot answer that. So don't try to answer, because you cannot. Revelation says, I know that you cannot answer. Do you know who is creating this mercy? I will call it Huve, Revelation says. And or let's say I will call it Allah. Let's start from there. Okay? And you say, what is Allah? And then Revelation starts describing it. I mean, quote unquote describing. How Revelation describes? True things that we see, we experience. So it says, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa, hayyul qayyum, and so on and so forth. Like giving us some names, some things that we experience in this life. By doing so, the Revelation telling us, okay, do you want to know what Allah is? It's just huwa. I'm giving you the verb so that you can use in your language. If you want to know more names, Qayyum, the Hayy, Qayyum, and so on. But all of these, as Yusuf said, these are the things that we experience. So Revelation is telling us that you cannot describe, you cannot know, because it's not, the type of this universe. You already came to this conclusion. But what you can do, describe your own experience. I realize when I look at the creation, I see that somebody constantly keeping it in existence. The existence does not cease, for instance. One moment the head is here and then it disappears. There is no such thing. So there must be someone keeping, keep creating it. That's my experience. It's not that, I'm imagining someone creating anything. This is what I see. And Quran says, let's call it ID. Okay? Just give a name so that I use in my language. That's the reason, Quran says, we sent down Quran, meaning we sent down what you asked, we send it to your level. Sent down in Arabic, in a human language, says the Quran, right? So whatever you are asking for, I will explain it to you in a way that you understand. Sent down, like when, let's say I'm a big professor, famous, every sentence I, articulate so, intelligent, and nobody can understand me easily. And then when I'm talking to this gentleman, I start giving him examples about fruits, animals, and so on, so that he can understand. So you would call this as I'm talking down to his degree, right? So that's the reason sending down is used in Quran, many times. And the same way, we send down Quran in Arabic so that you understand, right? Some crazy people would say, "Oh, but I don't know Arabic." The point is not there. It's like we're sending it down with the words that you can use. Makes sense. That's what it means. So giving all these experiences names, Hayy, Qayyum, Rahman, and so on, but these are all the things that we see. It's not about name.
Just one anecdote there.
Yeah,
These names are not random names, though.
Sure,
like
sure,
Rahman, Qayyum, these are relatable names to our day-to-day experience. But as if this, following up with what you were saying, it is saying that mind your business to me, meaning that I am teaching you these names because you are in need of a merciful one. So this is the avenue. Just talk about your need. You know what mercy means. You are in need of mercy. And you know that the mercy in here is sourced from him. So if you like, knock his door with the name, you are the merciful. Not imagining what he is like, but you know what you are in need of. You are in need of mercy. And you know that that source of mercy is unlimited, unshaped in any shape or form, but all sorts of mercy is coming from him. And I am in need of mercy. So this is why when I interact with him, it's going to be by the way of asking, because I am needy, for myself and for everyone. Right now, people are making dua, asking to the Creator for the people of Gaza. You haven't seen them. They're not your relatives. They're no one for you. Yet, they're part of your need too. Like you ask for them too. I am in need of mercy being applied to me, but them receiving mercy is me receiving mercy too. So based on that need, I say, I turn towards the creation and say that, or let's put it this way, it's going to be more proper. As we do in Fatiha, I am standing in front of the creation, saying that I take all of them behind me. I am speaking on behalf of them. So my speech is based on the experience that I am observing, and I am asking from you. This is why I'm using the word Rahman, because I am relating this interaction with the need of mercy and the manifestation of mercy that I observe, but I do not imagine you. I am focusing on my business, which is I am in need of mercy. And my interaction with him is being in the sense of I am the needy one, the recipient one, and you are the provider, and I seek from you. And this is why, again, in the Quran, the Creator says, if it was not for your prayer, what are you good for? In a very free translation. If it was not for your prayer, what would my God, my Lord would do with you? Like as if this is your only use. You are made to ask. This is the type of relationship between you and your Creator. Otherwise, as Zareen was mentioning at the beginning, and unfortunately her note-taking was disrupted by someone. So what would happen is I will start imagining, like as if I will wash God's dishes, or like, let me see what he likes, what he needs, so that if I buy it, he's going to be happy. Like this requires really getting to know him. But I mean, there's a thing called ma'rifatullah. So iman billah, belief in the Creator, is a conclusion saying that there must exist such a thing, such a one. This is conclusion, your conclusion, iman, being secure and sure that such a one must exist. But then there's what is ma'rifatullah, getting to know the Creator. Because when I say I know Birkan, that means I know the qualities of this person. But as we are now saying that I cannot know the qualities of the creator because I cannot imagine or shape, get to know your creator through your needs, what you are observing, what you are in need of. This is how you would get to know the creator. Then with this need, now that I am, because I observe two things. One is I am needy, the other one is I am being provided. Like we are needy, we are being provided. So that's an awesome thing. Like if you see that you see a poor person in there, and another rich person comes and gives food to that poor person, you will like that rich person at this moment, because some needy person's need is fulfilled by the rich person. Even if you don't know the guy, you would like that interaction in there. Whatever made this person give food to that poor person, you would say, I am supportive of this feeling, whatever made that person do this move. Has nothing to do with me, apparently, but it sparked the feeling of love in me. So I would love, I do love the merciful one. What I mean by that is, I do observe creatures that are in need of mercy, and they are provided with mercy. So I start loving merciful one. Yeah.
So this is a very good example. Maybe we can take from there. Like we see a poor person, and then a rich person comes and feed the poor person, and then we love it. Now I'm trying to know my creator. So there are different ways we can approach, right? One way would be, oh, just like we say, and this is I imagine it is the mainstream, the way which we should be avoiding. Just like this person feeding the poor people, my creator is feeding all the poor people, poor people in the universe or on the earth, right? This is how we usually think. Just like my mom showed mercy to me, my creator shows mercy to an all creation. Right? This is one way. Another way we can pray. Oh, look at this gentleman who's feeding this poor person, and I, experience something great there. And my creator is the one who creates this. When I look at the universe, I see that everything is provided, and my creator is the one source of this, like a provision. Now I'm not imagining my creator doing something, or I'm not comparing my creator to something I see in the creation. All I'm saying that whatever I see, whatever I experience, is the source. You know how, why, whatever, but I know that he is the source. He is the one who creates this. So next time when I need something, I say, through my past experience, I know that he is the one who feeds food. Okay? But again, this time is different than the first, the comparison. When I say he feeds food, it simply means when I experience a poor is being fed, I know that he is the source. That's what I mean now. That's what I mean now. So these two different ways of approaching the same thing makes a huge difference. And unfortunately, we are used to take it in the first way. Just like he does this, my creator does that.
And a prophet also uses this language. So let's also see where this is useful, and beyond there, it has to be left behind. Because as we have been also saying on the Friday discussions, reading Quran literally, reading creation literally, likewise reading Hadith literally, is going to put us into trouble. If I say, or Quran says, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, or like God's hand is above their hand, or Quran talks about the throne of the Creator, right? These are parables. Like he is like no one, Quran says, yet Quran is talking about hand of God. Quran is talking about throne of God. Like Quran itself says he is unlike anything, yet Quran gives me parables to understand the Creator himself. So isn't this going to be a contradiction in the larger scale? Or Prophet is saying, giving the example of one droplet of water as all mother's mercy compared to the ocean of God's mercy. So it looks like there's a comparison. In general, let's put an anecdote then. Anytime a comparison is made, there's for a purpose of that comparison is being made. So we cannot take it in all senses. So it might then, in the example of, let's say, mercy being one droplet versus the ocean, practically I'm going to take it, meaning, Yusuf, what is it that you are in need of? You are in need of mercy. God's mercy is beyond the amount you need. Because I am in need of a mercy which is going to resurrect me from grave. I am in need of a mercy which is not going to leave me to non-existence. That is a metaphorical way of saying this, that since you're a human being with imagination, I'm just putting it there. But from there, beyond there, you should leave that aside. To open up another small parenthesis, what I'm going to say right now is a topic that needs to be discussed by itself. But let's open up a small parenthesis, and inshallah in the future we will study that topic at some point.
Keep asking you,
That's good. So Qadir will think about that. So Nursi gives the example of saying, I studied civil engineering, let's say, and I designed this house, and I know how to make the house. And I said, oh, put these whole details and whatnot. And when I get into a house, immediately my eye is looking at the structure and saying that, it's done well. Or I say, well, the engineer is not good and whatnot. You know how this happens, right? If you cook well, you go to the restaurant and you start criticizing the cook because you're so good at it. Now, as I'm a good civil engineer who knows how to make the house, when I observe the globe of Earth and the solar system and see that, well, without any visible, pillars, moon is being standing in there, sun is over there, like the system is perfectly working, the mountains are put in there, the clouds and everything. I say, wow, the engineer of this universe, if my knowledge is this much, his knowledge is like so large. But then at some point I turn back and question myself, wait a second, my knowledge, is it mine in the first place? Because I thought it was mine. I use it as a measuring stick to quantify his knowledge. Then I get back to myself and say, how about this one? This is also not mine. Then my measuring stick disappears, meaning my quantity and everything goes out of, I say everything was from him. So he is unquantifiable in this sense. So I use that measuring stick initially to get to relate to him, to get to know him in terms of how it relates to me. But later on, I even remove that measure stick as well, saying that everything belongs to him. Still, I do experience, I get a sense of what it means to know something, but I say even that sense of knowing something is coming from him. So in the example of he is merciful, like mom's mercy is from here to here, all the rest is God's mercy, then I say, well, even the mom's mercy is God's mercy. So everything becomes his, everything coming from him. So this is why, to a certain extent, in our journey, we use this, but then we are stepping back and saying that, no, everything is his in terms of getting to know him. And then I turn to my business, which is, it's not my business to design or define him. Come to your business, which is you're a needy creation. You are in need of, like, death is around the corner. well, actually every moment there is death, life, death is keep happening. I would like not to die. I am in need of, like, I hate being alone, but I am alone in this existence. These are my realities. Fulfilling of these needs is what makes me turn to him. So how is this is this an information that should not be an information? Let's take this from our intellect, because intellect is supposed to be like a stomach. It should get digested and then should get immersed into the rest of my being, because I would like to interact with him. And my interaction is happening through my worship. And my worship, the gist of my worship is supplication, declaring my neediness and leaving the rest to him. I'm not suggesting him to, oh, give me this, give me that, and whatnot. And time to time we do that for sure. But even as we realize more, we even stop giving ideas to God how to handle my affairs. I just say that I am realizing I am needy. The need for this car, well, it was not.
After that.
It was not necessary, I think. Anyways, so this thing, that, I am starting to become ashamed to give ideas, opinions to God that, oh, give me this, give me that. I would rather say, I am needy and you are the provider of needs. I am needy of mercy. I am needy of love. I am needy of whatever, but I just declare my need and declare that I know you are the provider. You are the sustainer. You create me in this state of need. And now I'm coming back to you. You are the provider. That's all. Yes.
So maybe there's a need of needing closeness to him. So there must be a way of, traveling that distance.
Oh, do I travel that distance? Or what? Go ahead.
So, like I was not
Okay.
planning to talk about that, but since you asked, Imam Musa takes it in a very interesting way. He says, like, either you take this distance, which is unending, or he's already close to you.
Closer than your regular one.
Yeah.
You realize his nearness to you, like you were not alone in the first place.
So I was planning to talk about your question, how I interact and so on. It seems like when we talk about this ayah, there's none comparable unto him. It sounds like the ayah is limiting us. Oh, you cannot do that, or you cannot do this, and so on. And now we asking the question, well, what am I going to do with this? But when we take it proper way, this ayah, it actually gives us much richer way of knowing our Creator. So previously we were trying to imagine him, starting from there. Let's assume God is merciful, then how am I going to explain this or that? And we always fail again. Like, we cannot imagine a merciful God, or knowing God. Like, what do you mean all knowing? There's no such thing, right? When you try to imagine. But the ayah is
I'm going to give you an example. I imagine a God who gives me money so that I buy house to my parents.
Yes.
Like, a God cannot just out of nowhere give house to my parents. Go ahead.
Exactly. So we, end up with all these problems that so dear to us. So instead, this ayah telling us that, okay, you should have another way, which is, as we said, what you experience.
What you need.
Yeah, what you need. So one example comes to my mind that I've shared this before. I don't know how quick example it is, but it's just an example, like, don't take it to full extent. So let's assume you ask me, what is electricity? And I can, like, if I'm a,
Nerd.
smarty, nerdy, like, let's say, Zerling, then I can try to, explain it. These every, yeah, this material has this, the subatomic particles, some of them are called. Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, you are, yeah. But she's, with essential, the image of nerd, yeah. Which is good. So anyways, that starts telling us that, these electrons, it's being shared between molecules, whatever, I'm just making up. And then, they're moving and so on and so forth. This is one way of trying to describe it. In this example, we can describe electricity this way. So that's the reason it's not a great example. But another way to describe electricity is telling me that, the electricity is the one that, lights these bulbs. Oh, electricity, it's the one that heats your home. The electricity is the one that, hurts you when you touch. All these functional or experiential, let's say, definitions she could give, right? And if she does that, my relationship with the electricity is actually much richer, right?
Much relatable.
Much relatable, yes. Again, this is not a great example because we could explain electricity in the other way as well. When it comes to creator, only thing we have in hand is these functional experiential relationships anyway. That's how Quran describes. Allah, he is the one who creates these and that for you. Who is the one who gives life and death. All the things that we experience. And that's the only way. But we, for some interesting reason, including myself, up until, let's say, studying Nursi's text, we were not even aware of such a relationship. That's the interesting part, is the self-criticism. So instead, we try to imagine the electricity and imagine that you don't know anything about the physics. You're still trying to imagine electricity. Yeah, moving particles and so on. It won't work. So your relationship, your creator is nothing. Right? Instead, Quran comes and tells us you can have a relationship with your creator. Don't try to imagine. You will fail. And then you will say that, it's a distant creator, it's irrelevant in my life, I don't believe anymore. Right? This is what we do. May Allah forgive us. Quran instead says, I'm going to give you a working approach. Instead, look at your life, concentrate on what you experience, and call him with this name. That's the reason so beautiful in the prophetic tradition. Prophet always used to pray or ask something by invoking some experiences that he had, like, the one who created this for me, please give me this. But calling him with a name that relates to him, or the one who feeds us from our childhood to grave, please, send us food. When we do that, when we start from our experience, it becomes both relatable and also it reminds us what he didn't keep doing for us. Otherwise, when we start imagining him, we are stuck there, and the next stop is a distant creator, not even relevant to me. Who cares whether I believe or not? But the one who feeds us from childhood to grave, such a name, this is the name of a creator, like one name of creator now for me. Right? when I do that, it's very relevant.
And to give an extreme example, as an extreme example, a Christian friend of mine, which we were doing Bible Quran cross study with him, he used to say that, oh, your God is so distant, so unrelatable, but Jesus, Son of God, makes God relatable. Because physical, some goes through suffering as I do. This is where it comes to. Like, this idea didn't pop up out of nowhere. So, and although I might not be calling a son of God, whatever, as a Muslim, let me double check what I am doing. Or either I am totally keeping a distant creator and not interacting or getting to know or loving or whatever at all, or I am ascribing godly qualities, not to Jesus, Son of God, but to something else. But it's unidentified, at least in the Christian world. It's clear that you can pinpoint where the problem is. But in my world, without even identifying it, I might be. So that's why this verse is warning. So, Daraj, what do you think? Does it now make more sense that relatable, like, because I understand 100% when you say, well, you just left me in the vacuum, sort of, when you say God is undefinable, unrestrictable, and whatnot. But now interacting with or having a conversation with the Creator through my needs, through my experiences, does it make it relevant now? And when I say God is merciful, is it clear what I mean by that and what I do not mean by that?
I mean, yes, conversation, one thing to like understand something and then another thing you can apply it.
Okay.
But I definitely see like how it's explained and it makes like perfect sense, but I think it's to remind myself to this.
So, and so that we can conclude, this surah is called Ikhlas, sincerity. Although, like, generally surahs are named with the first word or the first few verses or a major theme and whatnot, like an animal in it. But this surah doesn't even have the word ikhlas in it or sincerity in it. So what can we say about the sincerity and the contents of the surah?
Name surah, by the way, like, is it prophet or is it God?
Well, prophets, and for certain surahs, like the way we name surahs are within Sahaba, which names were used to refer to that surah, because certain surahs have multiple names, because among Sahaba, they were being mentioned as, oh, this surah and whatnot. For this one, Ikhlas is used. So from which we derive that within that community, which were the students of the Prophet, either the Prophet immediately used it or they started using that. So what does this have to do with sincerity? Sincerity. Like khalis, or dedicating only, mukhlisin lahuddin, so dedicating only to him for the religion, for example. The word khalis, mukhlis is being used in Quran as well.
I mean, so the main thing is, separating the creator from creation and devoting yourself solely to him.
Okay. Oh, there are two. Well,
So the way I've been thinking of it these days, it's like being sincere to God. It's like sincerity towards God, and that is like truly understanding him in this way. Because like, like God talks about how you shouldn't like associate lies or, and if we like have another conception of God, like, like maybe his children, or maybe like, he has to have like the creator himself, like that is sort of like having an untruthful sort of a description of God in my head. So to me, like the sincerity part of it just means that, you know, you're being sincere to God.
Being sincere to God. Okay. I'll get to you, but let me refine it more. Sincere is a adjective put to generally acts. And we can also say a sincere person, but what we mean by that is, of course, it has to manifest somewhere, right? If I see Birkan is sincere, how do you know? Like you have to see it in action. Right? So sincerity in your actions and whatnot. So what does it mean, for example, in the light of this surah? I mean, Dua mentioned it as sincere to God, but let's put it into a more practical sense. So I see a Qadir in the gym and I say, oh, he is sincerely doing whatever, lifting. What does that mean? Or sincerely, dirt is better. Go ahead, dirt.
I guess whenever I think of like a sincere person or a sincere action, I think of somebody who genuinely had like thought of it, but came like with pure heart. They didn't come with like, if you're lifting, you're genuinely thinking of like, all right, I want to get better. You're not focused on the external thing. You're just there to be in that moment. Like whatever you want there to do, that's what you're doing. So you come with clear intentions, always associated with somebody like kind-hearted or whatever. So I think they'll be like pure.
Okay, so in this case, you are sincere towards Jim. Is it? Like she was mentioning sincere to God, but
I don't know if it's sincere towards Jim. I think my action
okay.
it can be described as sincere, not necessarily like don't associate. I guess like when I think of sincerity, I'm thinking of the action, what that represents. Like we talked about this a lot earlier, but like sincerity is describing your action rather than to the like I don't know how to describe it. Like it's
Okay,
not-
so let me put it this way. A sincere scientist, what would that mean? Let's put the Jim aside because Jim is not sincere anyways, right? So let's go talk about a sincere scientist. What do we mean by that?
That's the way. Oh.
Okay, we have another scientist nerd. Okay, scientist. Go ahead.
I guess that's kind of thinking of it that way, like being sincere in something is to like perform like that action like honestly and to the fullest extent of its purpose.
Okay.
So sincerely being a scientist would be like, you know, doing what is like asked of you, and like meeting those expectations and like doing it honestly. So I
Okay.
guess
So this is per the norms of the society. So in the light of revelation, if I apply Ikhlas to being a scientist, what would that mean? And again, the surah didn't have anything to say about sincerity, yet named as Ikhlas. So to become a sincere scientist in the light of what we discussed in the surah. Qadir, would you like to take that?
Can you repeat?
Oh, okay, this was. So in the light of the surah, then, what does it mean to be a sincere
So
scientist?
I was going to say this earlier, like in the light of this, it means to be sincere of what you see around yourself. So
For science, okay.
For example, for the scientist, he's
Okay.
seeing all of those things, and the way we started with the surah, he's always associating those things with different maybe causations or relationships. But when you're sincere, you do not do that kind of things. When you're even sincere with yourself, you do not do all of those things. You do not attribute those things to those causes. Maybe as a scientist or in the gym, you do not attribute muscle gain to the weight itself or like lifting any kind of thing. So that is being like if you're sincere to yourself. So this surah I think is trying to cure you of all of those things and make you sincere towards the creation that you experience.
So then can we say that in any sort of interaction I get into, let it be science, let it be familial relationship, let it be you and your dumbbell, is it dumbbell? So what sort of a relationship it is, if I take it in the light of this guidance, saying that we started with he, right? So because I thought, no, it was Dumble or it was me in the lab or something, there was an action being done and there was a he who is doing it. The surah was clarifying the zone from all potential candidates and saying that, no, it is he who does it and he is the absolute one. And then, because in the arena of, in the lab, let's say, I'm trying to find solutions and whatnot, I'm going to fall into needs in there. In the gym, you're going to fall into needs again. Wherever you turn your face to, in your familial relationship, you're in need of somebody to tell you what to give to your wife. There would be a need everywhere. So, but ikhlas in there would mean that see that everything is coming from that source. That relationship is to direct towards him. That your relationship with Dumble, your whatever you're doing in the lab, all should go back there. This is by pointing everything towards him, like everything is a signpost towards him. It's not like, oh, yeah, Dumble points to my muscle points to the creator. This is not mukhlas in the sense of everything points to him. No, I put pointers within the system and then eventually to God. This is not ikhlas. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. So he did not beget, not nor begotten. Ikhlas means everything points to him. So the sincerity in this case, then, if now we redefine our understanding of sincerity, because we generally tend to do it, as you mentioned, you do science just for the sake of science. I mean, there's no such a thing. You do the interaction with the whole existence, get to know him. This is your relationship with the existence. It's not like, oh, I'm going to become a good scientist, I'll be super famous, and then they will hear that there are good Muslim scientists, and then Islam, God is going to be pleased with that, right? This is being the attitude of, at best, a sincere scientist in our eyes as a Muslim scientist. No, in your everyday interaction in the lab, do you observe that everything points to him? If you do that, then your science would become a sincere science. Otherwise, yeah, brother was asking, ooh, we are too much over time. But since wife is here, it's okay. So brother was asking, like, shall I enter into industry or stay in academia? He said, like, it was a very genuine question. Says, I would like to make a change within the society and whatnot. And I thought academia would be the route to do. But in the events, we have seen that even in academia, the donors are really making the change. So even if you're a professor, the president of a university, like with the snap of somebody's finger, you get fired. So he says, well, shall I get into industry and become filthy rich and become a donor?
Yeah.
So this became the point, right? So, but this is again, of course, like, for example, if this happens, what would you say? Well, I would question the sincerity of the second intention, you would say, right? Because your ego also wants to get rich. But same thing applies for becoming the professor and serving the what society or Muslim society, Muslim identity, however you would like to call it. So whatever I do I see it as it is pointing to who is Allahu al-Ahad? Do I see it as such? If this is the case, then this is a sincere act. So this surah is really defining the gist of sincerity for us. That's why it should have been named as Ikhlas.
I love listening to you. So famous stupid people. Still wasting my time. Obviously. Anyway, they're talking about the Muslim Nobel laureate. The name doesn't matter. But interesting, like the guy is a Muslim scientist, but then they were trying to prove that he was not actually a believer. Like one of them was saying, oh, I saw him drinking, or something like that. It's the stupid part. But when you think about it, like the example you gave, it's really just to the point, because like if you think you will do everyone else does, and then just because you are Muslim, people look at you and think that, oh yeah, he's Muslim and he's a great scientist or he's great something, and that would, you know, help the Islam. What happens, they just look at you and talk about you as a person. Because whatever you are giving the society is nothing special. It's not anything different than others do. The unbeliever or believer, if you are generating the same product, feeding people with the same ideas, who cares whether you are a Muslim or not? Even if you are a Muslim, they will find an excuse to, you know, get rid of the idea of being Muslim with you.
So let's conclude with a dua then. اللهم بحق سورة الإخلاص اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين المخلصين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة